time has come for the next presentation. My name is Victor Kruger. I'm working as a real estate analyst at ABG Sundal Collier. This is our investor days, and next company is Genova Property Group. I leave the floor open for the CEO, Michael Moschewitz.
Hi everyone, hope everything is well. I will keep a brief presentation so we can flip to the next slide in the presentation. So we see it. Great, and I think my presentation here today will be just give you all a brief introduction to Genova. I don't know if everybody has heard about us before, and then I am planning to give you a brief operational financial update of the current situation. So that's the plan, and then feel free to ask questions after the presentation. Please flip to the next slide. One more, please. So just briefly, Genova is a company founded in 2006, focusing mainly on combining stable cash flows with project development. And the project development part is mainly focusing on rentals and community service for both long-term ownership and management. Next slide, please. As of today, Genova is holding roughly over 5 billion in properties, combining that also with holding a rather big building right portfolio consisting of roughly 370,000 square meters of land. Our geographical focus is the Greater Stockholm and Uppsala area, which are the key markets for us. Interesting to, if we look at the income streams in our operations, today closely to 50% of the income stream comes from community service and rentals. And if we add also groceries into the equation, that number is close to 60%. And I think our main intention is to have a very clear focus on having income streams from those segments in the market. If we look at the business model on the next slide here, and just to give a brief understanding how we operate comparing to our competitors, we have a very value-driven approach in how we invest. Very long-term perspective. We can own and drive a process with a project for a very long time. So if we look at the value creation circle and how we work, typically we like to buy assets where the city grows, and by that I mean that we like to invest in particular areas in the Greater Stockholm and Uppsala area where we know that the municipality has targeted some type of change in the zoning. So we like to invest in, it could be industrial areas, it could be an area where you have an old grocery stores in a very centrally located area where we know we can drive a very active zoning work with our urban land development, which is in-house at our business. And the key and what we are seeking for, of course, is to create building rights which create a lot of value for the project management going forward. So if we look at and compare ourselves, we are a real estate company that likes to be involved in the whole real estate cycle. And by that we mean we buy, we develop, we create the building rights, we build, and we keep it on our balance sheet. And that's a big difference towards our competitors. A lot of companies buy an asset, they rent it out and then sell it or keep it and hope that the yields will shift. Our intention is actually to buy a building, work very actively, both with the letting, but also with the zoning. And that creates a lot of opportunities for us. So as of today, I would say that the majority of our building right portfolio we have created by ourselves. And the value of that in the balance sheet corresponds to close to 1,000 kronor per square meters. And that's building rights in only Greater Stockholm and Uppsala. And that, of course, has also created a lot of excess value for us in our business, which means that we have an excess value off balance of roughly 1 billion Swedish created on that. And that is a very strong advantage, especially when you work with project development, because that creates possibilities to start projects with very, very high margins, which is our main intention. So that's also important to explain to everyone that we are, if we compare us to a lot of other construction companies or developers, the difference I would say is that Genova typically have lower entry values on the land, and that creates our higher margins. On the construction side, we work with fixed contract with established contractors, and then of course when we build and then we hold the properties on the balance. So that's just a brief explanation on how we work and operate and the value drivers in our business. Next slide, please. If we look at our investment properties today, we have a very strong focus, as you can see, on especially Stockholm and Uppsala. 90% of our values are related to those markets, and that is has been a very clear target on that, mainly because real estate and investing in real estate is it's a local game, and you need to understand the indicators when investing in those areas. So today we hold roughly 50 buildings, of which 90% are in Stockholm and Uppsala, and the rental value is just over 250 million, and we have a lettable area of close to 200,000 square meters. This portfolio of investment properties will grow, and it will grow organically when we develop our projects. And that, of course, will also, today we have a 50-50 split between community service and community service rentals towards commercial. But when Genova grows and when we invest going forward, I think the main income streams will be from rentals and community service, and that could be that's of importance and important to understand. Next slide, please. On the project development side, here's very important factors, and of course a very key and important driver to our growth. We control this building right, and that is a very important factor to understand. We have it already on the balance sheet at very low values. As I mentioned earlier, it is stated today at 1,000 kronor per square meters in the balance sheet, the land. And based on that, our organic growth will take and be an important driver for us going forward, and create higher margins, which will affect our P&L positively. As I mentioned earlier, we have been very focused of creating those building rights in particularly Stockholm and Uppsala area, which are growing areas. You have strong fundamenta, and the macros are very, very good in those areas. As you see on the picture here, that is an ongoing project in Norrtälje, where we are actually now building an elderly living of 80 apartments, a preschool, and roughly 300 rental apartments in a very central location, close to the municipality building and also close to the bus station. Next slide, please. Next one. If we look at our financial and operational targets, as many of you probably know, we managed to succeed with an IPO this summer, and we have new financial and operational targets from the beginning of the year. Main drivers of the financial targets, of course, the growth in long-term net asset value and, of course, income from property management, where we have the intention to grow with over 20%. Then, of course, we have frameworks related to the balance sheet on the equity and asset ratio, loan to value, and interest coverage ratio. Combining those with operational targets related to the income streams, as I mentioned earlier, with a clear focus there on going up to over 60% from community service and rentals. That number today in Q3 was 48%. And after the period, we have actually done a few transactions. So that is already exceeding 50% since the transaction we did in Q4. If we look at the ongoing constructions per Q3, that number was 438. And as I mentioned in the Q3 report, we believe our main focus and our belief is that by the end of Q1 2021, that number will be close to 800. Mainly because we have been very successful in the zoning in some of our projects, but also since we bought the land that we will start construction on. But I will come back to that. Next slide, please. So, if we look to give an operational update, what we are focusing on at the moment. Of course, very clear focus on the urban land development. And as I mentioned here, in July we got the zoning in place for a big project in central Knivsta, where we are building roughly 25,000 square meters of rentals. We have been active in Q3 and Q4 on the acquisition side, doing a few deals, both in Enköping, Uppsala, Knivsta. We did a swap deal recently, where we swapped a long stay hotel towards 2 schools. So we have been quite active, and from my perspective, it feels very, very well to leave the IPO process behind and to focus more of the business generating part of Genova, which feels very, very well. Then, of course, worth to mention is that we did the JV with SBB in August, where we bought building rights together with them in Nackastrand from Oscar Properties. Worth mentioning here as well, of course, is that we've been active on the financing side, which always is a key part in our business. And then, of course, monitoring the effects of the COVID, which for our business has been, our tenants has paid their rents, and we have had not so much problem at all. So being very, very lucky in the situation happening the last couple of weeks and months, I would say. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, focusing now going forward is on the ongoing construction, where we will increase that heavily and start constructing both in Knivsta but also in Enköping, driving the production side up to almost 800 units. We have a few acquisitions we have done that we will close the coming months. And as I mentioned earlier, we have done a few transactions, and we are evaluating new transactions. And as of today, actually, we did a strategic divestment where we sold four assets in Sundsvall and Gävle, which mainly because they were of retail character, the buildings, but also they were in areas where we are not primarily focusing at all. So it was a rather strategic divestment in Sundsvall and Gävle today, which had a positive financial effect since they were sold 10% over book values. Next slide, please. If we look at the financial development since in Q3, we see a steady and stable growth, I would say, both on the income side and especially on the rental income, but also the earnings from profit from property management that we are driving, and these are very clear and focused areas for us to increase the NOI. We of course are very interested of having a very strong and stable balance sheet. This is also the first quarter where we see the fully implemented IPO in place. So we have our key metrics are in place and are in good shape. Next slide, please. And on this slide, we just to give you give a feeling of how the development has been on both the property value and the building rights. So today we have property value of roughly 5.2 billion. That will continue to grow. We have building rights of roughly 6,000 planned units, which will be the organic growth driver for our business in combination with acquisitions. And that almost 6,000 building rights are today almost 370,000 square meters of land. So we will have a lot of development to do before we are not so worried about the pace and the ability to grow on our own, which is very, very well. And as mentioned on the top line here, of course, we have been, since we have been able to create our own building rights, we have a large excess value that today is off balance of roughly 1 billion Swedish. And that we will not use it to do any write-ups in the balance sheet. We will rather use it during our project development, which will give us higher margins, but also create unrealized value changes in our P&L over time, which you will see in the P&L. Next slide, please. Try to wrap it up here, and also with on the financial development, we have been, as I mentioned before, the financing situation of a real estate business is super important, and we have been working actively, especially on the financing side, to be able to grow our business as we planned. And as you can see here in the debt maturity schedule, our refinancing needs we have prolonged all our debt. So we have the big maturities are coming in 23, 24, which feels very good today. We also have a lot of available liquidity, both since we have done the IPO, but also we refinanced our bond earlier this year. So today our business are financed mainly from Nordic banks, where we have Nordea, Swedbank, SB and Danske as the main partners for our business. Yes, next slide. So just to conclude this presentation and before question is just to state that Genova is in a very good shape. We have a strong financial position, good liquidity, and we will take advantage of the opportunities that we can see now in the market. So we will keep a high pace on the construction side and increase the production, which will drive values together. We will try to find interesting acquisitions in our primary markets. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mikael. Thank you so much. You've stated before that building rights to low entrance values is a requisite for high profit in your projects.
Correct.
What is the greatest challenge for Genova in creating building rights with low entrance values?
I mean, that's of course to find good investments, but we have been successful and looking, and I think you need to have patience when you buy that type of asset, because driving a zoning can take a very long time. So you need to have a very long-term perspective investing like that. So typically for us, when we invest, we buy a building, we keep it full with a stable cash flow. We work with a zoning, and a zoning can take everything between 3 to 10 years to drive. But for us at the moment, we are having 25 to 30 different zonings in different phases, where we have 3 people on full time just working with those. So that's a very important part of our business.
Great, thank you. You have the new urban district in Upplandsbro with K2A, Knausten Andersson Real Estate.
Yes.
Would you like to tell us anything about that and also maybe specify the share of community properties and residentials?
Yes, that was actually one of my first investments coming to Genova. We bought that building from a foreign fund in 2014. We bought the building for 40 million Swedish, and we saw the potential there that to buy a building that was supposed to get vacant with 110,000 square meters of land. So what we did was actually what we always do. We leased it out, and we prolonged the lease with Coop for 3 years. And then we start working with the zoning. So last year we actually sold 30% of that project to K2A at an underlying property value of 350 million. And then we are now in a position where we are supposed to get the granted zoning in Q2 as expected. And the project will consist of 110,000 square meters of mainly, I would say, rentals, but then we have Engelska skolan that will be an important part in this project, together with the preschool and Hemköp. And then I would say that the main part will be rentals. Then of course we will have an elderly living. We might have some care in it as well, but the main part of this project will be rentals.
Great, thank you. That's very clear. Just to conclude here, we have a minute to spare. Factors or 1 to 3 to look for as an investor in order to track your progress in the coming year here, 2021. What would you say you should look for?
I mean, we have clear financial and operational targets. We have now been in. We tried to close here in Q4 by having a much more clear focus on our primary markets, which means that we have both divested non-core areas, as I mentioned in the presentation, but also we did a swap deal where we sold away a long stay hotel and replaced that with schools, which is also so I think if we look forward, we'll try to accelerate the pace on the production side, and also hopefully doing more acquisition to increase the income streams even more. So I think that of course will drive the P&L.
And no value, no numbers to specify in terms of acquisition to look for.
But I would say that last year we invested roughly 1 billion. I think we'll have a number like that by the end of this year, but hopefully we can invest more next year.
Great. Mika, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.